On today's episode, Tough Mudder Director of Global Product Chris Maltbie announces the city for World's Toughest Mudder 2022.
This is the World's Toughest Podcast. Welcome to the World's Toughest Podcast, where we talk about any obstacle course race you'd like, as long as that's World's Toughest Mudder. Each week we talk to members of the WTM community and share stories of success and failure in the single greatest event in OCR. My name is Will Hicks, and this is the World's Toughest Podcast.
Welcome back to World's Toughest Podcast. Thank you for listening. You are too kind. My name is Will Hicks. My name is Will Hicks. What happened there? My apologies. Today in our show, Chris Maltbie from Team HQ joins us. We are going to talk about the new venue announcement. Tough Mudder announced months ago that World's Toughest 2022 would be held in Pensacola, Florida. They announced the exact spot today. It is a little town called Atmore, Alabama. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, okay, well, I thought Pensacola was in Florida, and you just said Alabama. And, you know, that's a fair point. I have Google Maps open, and from the Pensacola airport to Atmore, Alabama. Atmore, Alabama is just north of Pensacola. Currently, at 2 o'clock Pacific time, 5 o'clock Eastern time, where Pensacola is, it is about an hour and 7 minutes, 47 miles to Atmore from the airport. There's a little bit of slowing on the 29. You're going to catch that on your way out of town as you pass Cantonment, going through Barano Park and up past Walnut Hill on your way to Atmore. So it's about an hour, 47 miles from the airport. That's a give or take. That's a little bit longer than Atlanta to Fairborn, the Atlanta airport to the Fairburn venue in 2018, 2019. Not nearly as close as Laughlin. Actually, you know what? Most people that ran Laughlin flew into Vegas, and it was like at least an hour drive from probably an hour and a half. I don't tell my team, but when I picked them up from the airport and we went back from Vegas down to Laughlin, I took the wrong way and it took us like 2 hours. I don't think they noticed. I haven't told them yet. We went past like the Hoover Dam, and I know you're not supposed to pass the Hoover Dam on the way from Las Vegas to Laughlin. So one thing I need to check on, it looks like there's a time change between Alabama and Florida. So that was a cause for concern in Laughlin as well. There was a time change depending on which side of the river that ran through Laughlin you stayed on. So that's something else to be aware of. If you're like, Will, I don't know anything about Atmore, Alabama. Well, welcome to the club of the rest of us. Let me tell you a little bit about Atmore, Alabama. From a tiny town to the largest city in Escambia County, Atmore's continued development is poised to keep bringing in more growing businesses, new residences, and opportunities for current citizens. So there's Atmore, Alabama for you. It's right between, if you're like, where is Atmore? I told you it's an hour north of Pensacola, but it's right between, it's basically exactly in the middle between Nokomis and Canoe, Alabama. So that's how you know you're in the right spot. I talked to Chris about this. My Airbnb is right on the beach in Pensacola. If you want to get an Airbnb in Pensacola, 95% of them are within like a mile of each other. They're all on the beach. Because if you're going to Pensacola, you want to stay on the beach. So it's going to be probably an hour and a half for me to drive to the venue. Here's the good thing. After the race, you drive back to your Airbnb in Pensacola. The brunch on Monday is in Pensacola. It's in the city of Pensacola. So post-race, when you're all beat up, you will not have to worry about that. That's the good thing. So we're going to talk to Chris Maltbie. He's going to break it all down for us. We're going to talk about the race, talk about the weekend schedule. We're going to talk about the terrain for the venue. And also, World's Toughest Mudder community member Jay Mazza is an employee of Team HQ now. I did not know that, and I'm very excited to congratulate Jay for that. Before we talk with Chris Maltbie, let's read some iTunes reviews.
5 stars.
5 stars. 5 stars. 5 stars.
5 stars.
5 stars.
5 stars.
All right. It's review time. If you listen to this podcast on Spotify, do me a kindness. Can you pause it right now? Go open the Spotify app. It's already open. And leave a review. Rating or review. It's just click a number of stars. 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, 4 star, 5 stars. And if you are listening on your Apple device, you can open the Purple Podcast app, search for World's Toughest Podcast, scroll down to click Write a Review, and I will read it on a future episode. Thank you. It's time to talk with Chris Maltbie. Let's go to the phones. Chris Maltbie is the Director of Global Product for Tough Mudder. Always happy to have Chris Maltbie on the show. Welcome back, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Chris, we are finally able to announce the venue for World's Toughest Mudder 2022. Where will World's Toughest Mudder be?
Yeah, long time coming. So World's Toughest this year in the Gulf Coast is in Atmore, Alabama. So it's a little less than an hour outside of Pensacola. There's a small municipal airport in the area, but most flights will be into Pensacola. So it's right down there in the Panhandle. Have a great venue that we've locked up and I'm ready to go for you guys in November.
So Pensacola-ish. You said how far is it from the Pensacola airport?
It's a little bit less than an hour, 45, 50 minutes or so outside Pensacola. But we will be doing the post-event. We'll get into the weekend in a minute, but we'll be doing the post-event awards brunch on Monday in downtown Pensacola. So
that's similar to like Atlanta. You fly to Atlanta airport and go to Fairburn for the race. I have an Airbnb already reserved in Pensacola. Am I in trouble?
You're not in trouble. You're proactive. So, a lot of the accommodation, offerings will be in Pensacola. As community knows, over the course of that weekend, you are in the pit and on the course. So, where you book on Friday or Monday, being a little further away is not the worst thing. Most importantly, there is a Walmart in Atmore, Alabama. So for your last minute, supplies you need to pick up or sending your panic pit crew out in the middle of the night to buy some of those peanut butter and jelly bites or whatever your fix is, we've got what you need right there.
I feel like Pensacola will be more well equipped to handle us than Laughlin was, maybe.
We don't speak ill, but Pensacola, beautiful spot. I think it's the perfect spot. If it was me, come Sunday afternoon, I'd be sleeping on a beach, and Monday morning I'd be rolling into a nice brunch along the seaside. So yeah, it's a good spot.
I don't mean to slight Laughlin. They did fine. And honestly, I never heard of anyone running out of, what are those called? Uncrustables. I think they had us covered. So I think we were concerned, but it ended up being fun.
I think our community, World's Toughest Runners in particular, will give any supply chain a run for its money when it comes to Uncrustables. There's an insatiable demand for Uncrustables, bacon, and pickle juice.
I have heard supply chain more. I don't think I've ever heard the term supply chain until the last 2 years, and now can't get away from it. World's Toughest too.
We'll just recommend buy local when it comes to Uncrustables. Buy them where you live, bring them with you, and you'll be no issues.
So we know the city. Tell me about the schedule for the weekend. What are we doing the weekend?
Yeah, so pretty familiar to anyone who's been out before. Friday, starting in the morning, we'll be doing a pit load in. That'll be open through early evening on Friday. We'll do the race briefing that night on site, as we did last year in Laughlin. Pit opens up again 7 a.m. on Saturday on race day. Race starts at noon, goes until start line closes at noon on Sunday. Last finisher across the line, or the finish line closes, I should say, at 1:30 p.m. that day. Offsite a couple hours later. loaded out of the pit, and then we'll do a Monday, late morning into early afternoon brunch in downtown Pensacola.
Sounds very similar to 2021. Is there anything different, like massively different that I missed in there?
No, it's very similar to last year's run of show. So we've been sinking into that groove of what works. We really liked doing the on-site race briefing last year. Everyone was already there, already buzzing, knock it out that evening. We will do a makeup in the morning for folks that can't make it in, that fly out a little bit later. But no, it should be pretty routine for folks that have been out again, a staged load in the morning, pre-selected pit spaces, all that good stuff to reduce some of the pre-race craze.
Do we still plan to have a hot lap the day before?
Yep. There'll be an open hot lap like there was last year to get out and try out some of the obstacles.
It was fun watching some of the pit crew get out there and crawl through the electrical obstacles or do whatever.
Yeah, it's cool, right? I mean, for so many years, the pit crew would hear stories about what happened on course, but you didn't exactly know what it was like. So it gives them a little bit of insight. And frankly, lets them find their way around a little bit. As you've seen, parts of the course are accessible for pit crew to go cheer people on during the race. So to just kind of have their bearings, know where things are at on course, and know what their athletes are going through is a nice step up, we think. Tell
me about the terrain. What is it going to look like out there?
Yeah, we're not in the desert anymore. So it's a little bit of a switch back to more varied terrain. So a lot of woodlands on this property. So trail running is really quite nice. There's no severe elevation gains, but it's more of the rolling hills through the woods with some natural water on site. So it's more of a slow burn that'll catch up to you, come late night, early morning hours. The woods at night are a different beast as well. It's, you're certainly not going to have the Laughlin skyline in the distance as a beacon of light. So it gets dark in there, but it's good running. They're nice trails. It's something a little bit different. The mud isn't going to be as thick. It's not Georgia clay, probably much to everyone's delight. You're not going to add 10 pounds of mud to each shoe, each lap, but it'll have some slop. It's not all sand pits like you'd have out west either. So it's a good mix, a venue we really quite like.
The exception of the mud you just talked about, it sounds like you could be describing Atlanta, as far as the terrain.
Yeah, I mean, in the southeastern U.S., so it's more similar than different to what we have there. But a little different. Some of the density of the woods is a little different. The way the hills rock around there are a little different. But if you excelled in Atlanta versus some of the sandier running out west, you'll like this one.
What else do we need to know about World's Toughest this year?
It's going to be a good one. We announced a lot of the World's Toughest details when we did the last podcast. With the Endurance Series launch. So we're recommending it's a good time to go back if you want to read up on the rules and need to refresh your memory on qualification, contender status, elite contender status, anything like that. It's a good time to do that. A couple of the changes there this year that we had covered. Infinity, obviously new this year. We have the first Infinity ever in the UK coming up next month, and then the first US Infinity in Philly, the same weekend as Philly Toughest. So you can qualify through that, rather than tougher and some of the confusing qualification metrics in the past. Now, Infinity has a strict distance barrier the same way Toughest and World's Toughest always did for contender status. We also have the full list of Spartan events that you can qualify through. Elite contender status is spelled out clearly this year, which is a change for us. So it used to be by invite or by application for elite contender status. Now we've put in, strict thresholds there that if you surpass at an Infinity, at a Toughest event, at a previous World's Toughest, you can be straight in to that crowd there. So it's a little bit more clear if that's what you're gunning for. You want to be front and center. We also have the Masters qualifications this year. So ages 50 plus, you can qualify with a slightly different qualification standards there. So that's all in the in our Zendesk at Tough Mudder. FAQs, you can read through that. A lot of good details in there, but it's a good time to get excited, plan around, get ready for World's Toughest, book your flights, and be ready to rock out there.
And there's also Spartan race achievements. People can qualify for contender status.
Yep. So the events there specifically called out are Spartan Ultra and Spartan Ultra World Championship. But as always, we will a couple months time, have the applications open. So you can, pass. Most of the qualifications are through in-year events, so 2022 events. If there's some other circumstance and you have a top finish at an event last year, for example, you can apply. We'll review those. We'll be releasing the timelines for decisions sort of forthcoming. But yeah, there's a few ways to get in there.
I know it's still early, but the theme for last year, Kyle and you, it was Kyle, one of you guys told me last year before the race, was mashups, like taking two existing obstacles, put them together and see what happens on the other side, right? Do you have any thoughts on themes or an overall idea for the race?
So I can't prescribe a specific theme to it yet. What I will say is that I've had a lot of ideas rolling through my head, through the years that I hadn't been at Tough Mudder in the middle there, through the years that I was running World's Toughest every year and having seen Laughlin last year. And this year will be a nice explosion of a lot of those ideas. So more to come, but yeah, we're hoping to do some really cool stuff out there and really get creative this time around.
I noticed you use the word explosion.
Don't read too much into it, or do, time will tell.
I just heard that WTM community member Jay Mazza has joined the TMHQ team. Tell me about that.
Yeah, that's true. So Jay, a lot of the community knows. He's been an ambassador with us, a long time participant, 100+ finishes. And Jay has joined us as a community manager in-house. So you will see him at almost every event in the U.S. this year. A couple exceptions, mostly because we have some weekends that have two events in the same weekend. And Jay, for all of his strengths, cannot be two places at once. But he is front and center at every event right when you enter it. So we have a new info hub on site this year. That's partially wayfinding, answering questions, insights into what Tough Mudder is about, Legionnaire program, all of that good stuff. And no one's better positioned than Jay to answer those questions. But we also do, same year and next year sales for events there. And Jay is able to really, with his depth of knowledge about the product and the venues, is able to speak, really directly to that. So, when you come into our events, you go through registration, you pass through merchandise, and then there's a tent right there. And Jay has a incomparable level of energy. So it's been really wonderful to have him on site so far. He's been with us, out there every event this season that, we've so far been through SoCal, Arizona, College Station, Texas last week. And yeah, he'll be at almost everyone going forward. He's also working with the community and the ambassadors on a bunch of different initiatives, local marketing, all of that good stuff. So stoked to have him in-house, and, certainly love personally having someone to talk to about all the ideas we want to roll with this year.
I think it was in Atlanta, toughest Atlanta, maybe 2017, 2016. I was going across whatever year Kong was the finisher obstacle, and it was toughest. And I, for whatever reason, just can't get across Kong. Like I could not. And Jay was on the other side. I don't know if he was a volunteer or just like running the race. And he was like yelling at me and cheering for me. And like I made it across Kong and I was super excited. And he was right there. Anyway. So Jay Mazza has a soft spot in my heart.
Unbelievable. Anyone that was out at Worlds last year would have seen him in his football pads standing at Mudderhorn the entire time, which is just, on and off the course, certainly lifts people up.
Yeah, those guys that did Mudderhorn and Everest last year. I mean, I praise them every time I get a chance, but I feel like it's not enough. They were incredible.
There are few things more challenging at Worlds or toughest or any of the endurance events really than showing up at an obstacle in the middle of the night and being alone and just being stuck. And on the flip side of that, nothing quite like having a set of hands there. And with those guys going out there for the entire duration of the event just to help the whole time, it's something else. Anytime we talk about toughest, World's toughest, the hardest thing to convey to someone that's not been there to do it is like how a competitive event can have so much teamwork in it. And those guys just embody it. Wouldn't believe.
It doesn't get talked about as much, but you just talked about how tough it is mentally to like come to an obstacle by yourself. And you're like, I don't know if I get of it, but you're thinking about that the whole, like, oh man, I don't know. I'm going to get to Everest. What am I going to do? And it's like, it's messing with your head for miles leading up. And if you know those guys are there it totally eliminates that like mental strain. And World's Toughest Mudder, it's a very tough event physically, absolutely, but it's very tough mentally also. And if you can remove that stress of that there's guys going to be there, and it's going to be hard, but you can get up, then it makes the race that much more doable.
Yeah, you just go down that checklist in your head, what the next thing you're dreading is, and maybe it's not the next obstacle, but it's out there somewhere. And you're absolutely right. When you can cross it off, or for me, it used to be the cliff when we were out in at Lake Las Vegas, and it was like I hated it with a burning passion. And the second I knew it was going to close, like I timed my lap out to not need to do that one time more than I absolutely had to, and like that's just such a weight off your shoulders.
Sure.
So anytime any of those things, or the ones that have the really bad penalties that you just don't want to do at any cost, and there's nothing to do but anticipate it.
Okay, so you have more experience than any race director Tough Mudder's ever had. When you're planning out obstacles, like, do you think you're like, oh man, I really hate the cliff? Like, does that make you like want to not have a cliff, or does it make you like we got to have something tall?
To me, it's about the complement of what we have out there and sort of like the range of experiences you get. I don't think Worlds in particular is at its best when it's just needlessly beating you into the ground. I think it's at its best where it's strategically picking apart different strengths and weaknesses, and really giving you an opportunity to succeed by planning and training. But also making sure that you're pushing yourself, right? If it was an easy event, you'd cross the finish line at the end and you'd feel okay. But when that you had to overcome a series of things that you really were not feeling each lap, it elevates it to another level. So try to be thoughtful with it. Try not to just do things that are needlessly mean-spirited. And the one thing I'll say pretty bluntly is I'm not a big fan of outright games of chance. So, I like people to be able to dictate their own fates, and
sure.
That doesn't mean the penalties won't be crazy and out of left field from time to time, but at least you had a fair shot on your first go at that obstacle. So
you'd be more about the Etch-a-Sketch than about the rolling a die to pick your wall.
Yes, I 100%. That is my MO.
Looking back at 2021 and the difficulty of the course, do you think that was about right? Do you want it a little harder, a little easier for 2022? Do you think about it in those terms?
So not so much year on year, the gross difficulty. I think we do learn from what we do each year. When I was out, I ran a couple laps of the course before the event in Laughlin. And to be clear, I wasn't directly involved. I rejoined Tough Mudder only a few weeks before that. So I hadn't designed that course, but I went out and ran it, and I knew it was going to be a runner's course. I wasn't surprised, what Mark Batchers did out there. If for a really strong runner, if you can climb those little short, skippy hills and scramble up that sand and all that, you can really rack it up. So, I don't think easy or harder is necessarily the way to look at it, but, looking to bring out all new stuff. So we don't want everything to be predictable. We've sort of changed gears over the years. It used to be a complete surprise on your first lap or second lap or whenever things open. Now we're a little bit more clear on messaging going into the weekend, which I think is helpful. We want people to have the opportunity to both be surprised, but also really prepare and prep for that sort of stuff. But yeah, I think that it's unique challenges for sure. Finding the right level of balance there. But if a course offers the opportunity to really blast out miles, that's good too. For if you trained to blast out miles and you're given a course that allows that, by all means. We're not trying to keep it so no one can ever cross X threshold, and we're never trying to set it up to inflate mileage either. We want a good balanced course each year. So
I'm convinced that if Ryan Atkins was there last year, he and Batris would have pushed each other, and one of them would have got 125. I don't know which one, but I think one of them would have.
Yeah, they could have popped off. I think it's, those guys are unbelievable to watch. You just talk about people that have a different gear and can just go and can maintain, through that sort of stuff. So yeah, we'll see what field comes out this year, but it certainly makes it more entertaining for everyone to watch those competitions go down, especially at the end of the day, when it's wrapping up on Sunday and you've got a race to the finish. That sort of crazy ending. So yeah, it should be great this year.
Chris, any last thoughts on World's Toughest 2022 or the new venue?
I think you got me on this one. I think it's going to be great. I think everyone's going to be pretty stoked in a new spot. It's close to this year for our friends in the UK and Western Europe markets that are going to come over. So yeah, let's all join in the Gulf and have a good time.
You can sign up for World's Toughest Mudder today at toughmudder.com. Chris Maltbie, thanks much.
Yeah, thank you.
Special thanks to Chris Maltbie for appearing on the episode. Well done, Chris. Come back anytime. Apologies for my voice. It's got a pony in it. It's a little hoarse. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Will I see you at World's Toughest 2022? Let me know. Shoot me a text. 619-485-2726. Follow the OCR Report on Instagram. I will talk with you soon. Go spend time with someone you love.